Hi guys, Mr. Talbot here. We're going to be going into our topic on the European Enlightenment. So kind of be taking notes as we go, kind of as we finish up each of the slides and text, kind of a good opportunity to stop where you're at, kind of take a quick note or two down, and go on from there. So when we're talking about the Renaissance, it kind of is going to come from kind of an old Roman Latin language, and it's going to kind of translate it from rebirth. So kind of if you think this is going to be focused in Europe, and Europe is kind of going to be coming out of its dark ages and going kind of back to some of the things that made it, great. Now this is kind of a misunderstanding because like Europe's dark ages had a lot of good stuff, but when you compared it to what was going on with Greece and Rome, it kind of doesn't look as cool. And there was kind of this desire to get back to that. So they're going to be looking back at the classical texts of Greece and Rome. Uh, a lot of this would have been lost if not for some of the traders and merchants in the Muslim world that had kind of preserved it and been using those texts to inspire its golden age. So now Europe's going to try and have its own new golden age or renaissance by looking at those same texts. Um, in the early phases, it would feel a little weird because we know that in Europe the Catholic Church is super duper powerful, and the Catholic Church, in a lot of ways, didn't like people looking at text other than its own text like the Bible. But the Catholic Church is going to be kind of okay with this because a lot of these stuff from Greece and Rome predated what was going on with Christianity. So we're going to see through the Renaissance that Europe's going to end up reconnecting with the world, and it's going to end up having this age of exploration. It's going to get involved in trade, and so that's why figures like we see on the left here of Christopher Columbus are going to be important. Um, Science is going to become a thing as people are looking more into individuals can fix the problems of the world today. They don't need divine, godly intervention. So it's going to inspire people like Galileo in the bottom right here to go into science and astronomy. We're going to see this influence politics and what kind of people should rule. But the Renaissance is probably most well known for kind of the different forms of artwork it inspired, like Da Vinci's Mona Lisa, Michelangelo's David in the Sistine Chapel, and some of the architecture like the Basilica here. So, kind of big changes going on throughout the region. And a central idea, and definitely something to take note over, is humanism. So this is kind of a change in the way people were thinking. And so, at the time of the Dark Ages, things were pretty much, well, if you wanted to explain something, just look to what the church says. And, well, why does that weird thing happen? Well, because God said it was going to happen. Now we're going to be shifting into humans can have an influence and humans can begin to understand things. And then humans can solve problems. And so that's kind of a big idea of humanism. And you're going to look more at yourself as an individual and less as a member of a group. So two individuals can get along, even though one's a Protestant and one's a Catholic, or even though one's from this Italian city and you're from this French city, we can still get on. And this is going to be kind of a big shift in the way Europe had been going. How this translates into artwork is probably best seen in Michelangelo's David. You can see just how realistic, how focusing on the human form it is and kind of looking at that individual. So, when you look at that statue, it's almost hard to believe that that could really be made out of stone just by chipping away at it, but impressive work done by these different artists. From a social level, we think was in this feudal system with serfs at the bottom and kind of if you weren't a serf, maybe you were in this, guild or this group. Well, now we can think, well, you have this individual talent, so you can go do this thing. So serfdom is going to kind of be going away. So we're going to see society is going to get more free and more open. Um, Politically, people are thinking because we have individuals, those individuals also have rights. And so this Renaissance is going to lead directly to the Enlightenment, where we're talking about things like people have natural rights, people should have religious freedom, there's moral and ethical ways to treat people. So, what we're going to learn about in topic 2.2 is that this is going to be happening at the same time and kind of somewhat in response to the fact that there's all these religious wars and this kind of counter reformation and people being burned at the stake and witch trials and all that. So this is going to kind of be a counterbalance to that. Some of it's happening at the same time, but it's going to kind of eventually the Renaissance ideas are going to win out and society is going to kind of move forward into the Enlightenment. So kind of emphasizing some differences in artwork here we can see. You've got on the left-hand side some medieval artwork where you can tell it's people, but it's not super realistic. When you get into the Renaissance, again, emphasizing that individual form, you're going to see these different features of realism. Now, with both of these are both religious symbols. So like religion didn't become the thing people didn't think about. For the most part, it's going to be kind of artists are going to be looking for where can we get money from, and sometimes they're going to get money from the church, sometimes they're going to get money from wealthy families. But the church is going to still influence art, but it's going to have less influence politically, is what we're going to see. So, kind of, why did all this happen? So, we're going to say Renaissance again means rebirth. Well, to be reborn, first you have to die, and in Europe, a lot of people are going to die. Um, you're going to have the Black Death. It's about 1350, right on the eve of the Renaissance. That's why we think this is a cause. And about half of Europe's population is going to get wiped out. That, of course, is going to include the serfs, but it's also going to include your rich people. It's going to include your nobles. It's going to include people in the shoemaking guild or whatever. And when all half the population dies, you've got to have people to fill these different roles. And it's really going to kind of spark the economy to modernize. Europe had been stuck in this feudal way of doing things where you're a serf, you're tied to the land, that's how it's going to be, and that's how it's going to be for your kids and your grandkids. And I'm the noble, I own this land, and that's just the way it is. Well, when a bunch of the nobles die, you have this land, you got to figure out what to do with it. And when there's a lot less serfs, they can say, well, no, I don't have to listen to you because I think that I should be able to get paid more, or I should be able to go be a shoemaker if I want to be. And the shoemakers guild's like, well, we need shoemakers, so sure, come on in. And so this really opened up the economy and a lot more economic freedom we're going to see during this time. With that, the economy is going to grow. This is still an economy based largely on gold. And so, with only half the population and the same amount of gold, people in general just have more money. Uh, Poor working class people, they've got more negotiating power. So, they're going to be able to get paid more. You're going to see more middle class people able to invest more and to grow their businesses. This is going to allow them to invest in art and finance those artists. It's going to allow these trading businesses to develop. And so, all this is going to help keep pushing Europe forward. Um, at the same time, because of the Black Death, people are going to somewhat turn away from the Catholic Church. And you're going to have all this social upheaval. It's not just going to affect feudalism, it's also going to affect the Catholic Church, which at the time was the most powerful political player on the scene. And so instead, in place of the Catholic Church having power, we're going to see different monarchs are going to come to power. And so some of these monarchies are going to challenge church for power, most famously with Henry VIII in England. Um, but more importantly, as they grow in power, they're going to be able to tax more. They're going to be able to finance things like exploration. And that's going to be what kind of kickstarts modern Europe, but also the modern age of exploration and the connected world that we're going to see as a result. And so, why did it start in Italy is a big question. There's a lot of different theories, and one of them is Italy's kind of always been a center of trade. Italy, while there were the Dark Ages, Italy still has the most remnants of the Roman Empire because Rome is in Italy. So Rome still kind of had been this trading center as the center of the Roman Empire, and that didn't all fade away even in the Dark Ages. So this is going to allow Italy to connect with the rest of the world. Bad news, it's going to mean Italy is going to be hit with the Black Death first. Good news, it means they have the most direct access to kind of the golden age of Islam and all the kind of old classical texts. And also because they're hit with the Black Death first, they're going to be able to kind of modernize first, and Italy really becomes the center of trade, particularly Venice and Florence in northern Italy. The other things, and so what we see in Italy then is that they're going to see their economy is going to kind of modernize first and kind of get into some modern banking. In Germany, we're going to see this guy named Gutenberg is going to invent a printing press, and that's going to kind of help spread information. And then a couple decades later, an Italian guy financed by the Spanish monarch is going to discover the Bahamas, kickstarting the age of exploration. So that's going to be some big, big changes that are going to happen across Europe. I want to emphasize the printing press. It's something we take for granted today that we have so much readily access to information. Wasn't the case back then. Prior to the invention of the printing press, books had to be copied by hand. Well, to copy a book by hand, you have to be literate, and back then that probably meant you were a monk or a priest. So the only books that are being made in Europe are pretty much being made by a Catholic figure of some kind. So the Catholic Church could really control it, the messaging that was going out there, really control the information, and only a handful, only your nobility, your wealthy are going to have books. As a result, you have really low levels of literacy. The printing press makes printing cheaper, makes it faster, and makes it to where the church can't control it. So we're going to see a lot more information spread. We're going to see a lot of literacy increase, and this is going to kind of lay the groundwork for new ideas, new science, new technology, new political ideas that the alignment are going to start spreading over the next 100 and 200 years. Now, one thing we did kind of lose is that books were really cool back then. You don't need to take a note on this, but I like to kind of emphasize this is the Book of Kells. It's in Ireland today, and you can kind of see the incredible detail that would go into each page. There's talks that a monk might spend, 6 months on a single page working on this. So not a lot of books being made, not a lot of information, but they were pretty darn impressive. And then what kind of changes is the printing press is invented, and you can kind of just move words and letters around and just can produce anything. So you're not just making one book, you can make a whole variety of books, a whole variety of information can be spread. So kind of summing up, and don't forget when you finish, it's a great chance to take a summary of your notes and those Cornell notes you're hopefully making. The Renaissance really affected all aspects of life. It affects the economy, it affects the politics, it's going to affect the social structure by getting rid of feudalism. Politically, we're going to see monarchs get more power. We're going to see the Enlightenment inspired by this. Economically, there's more economic freedom. Religious, the Catholic Church is going to be losing its influence. And there's going to be the big push to focus on individuals with humanism. There's another video that kind of goes into that in a lot more detail. Hopefully this has been helpful, guys. As always, email me if you had any questions. Have a great day.